Welcome back to the newest corporate happiness show. I'm Jacqueline Pirtle, your host, and I tell you what, I'm just super excited because today this show is actually number 30 of season 1, meaning that this is actually the finale, a grand finale. It is absolutely, and I'm just over the moon because I tell you what, we had a really great audience, so thank you for everyone always listening. We had amazing guests. I learned a lot, and today I feel like we have the most special guest ever. Why? Well, we're gonna let you in on what she actually means to the corporate happiness show. So welcome Zoe Pirtle to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm usually on the other side of all of this, but it's very cool to be here.
I know, right? Well, hint, listener, she has the same last name than I do. So, anyway, so Zoe, you are an audio engineer, you are an indie artist, a musician, and just the most talented person I am always surrounded by. And you are always a published author of all of my books and other fellow authors. So, I mean, it's like, tell us a little bit about what do you really do, especially for the corporate happiness show?
Well, for the corporate happiness show, I'm an audio nerd, so I handled setup on the recording. I handled setup with the recording gear that Jacqueline Pirtle or FreakyHealer uses. I also take care of all of the audio editing that happens after the recording itself. So once I've got the audio, I put it together with the video. So I guess I do a little bit of video editing. But I mostly focus on the audio parts of it and leave the video alone. So I will trim things. I will make sure it sounds smooth. I'll put some compression, make sure everybody sounds level. So it's, it sounds good.
That's
But
amazing.
outside of
Yeah.
but outside of the corporate happiness show, I do a lot more. I also contribute music to the show as well. So I will make background music and we will put that underneath. So for instance, the intro music you hear when you tune into the corporate happiness show, that's actually one of my pieces. It's original music and given to FreakyHealer. Outside of FreakyHealer, I write my own music. I'm an indie artist, so I will write the music myself. I'll record it. I'll mix, master, release it. I'll do it all. But I'm also a freelance audio engineer, so I'll work with corporate companies to create sound branding moments. So if they have a logo that is animated and needs sound, that's something that I contribute. So on and so forth. So I do a lot of odd audio jobs. I'm an audio nerd.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I mean, honestly, it's like I learned from you, about the microphone and everything and about our guests and what to tell them. And so I feel like I learned so much, not only from all the guests and their input, whatnot, but also like from you. And then in the background, how it's then really produced to the end. So it sounds good. And the guests are always, well, the listeners and the guests are always really happy with the outcome. Why do you think it's important that it sounds good?
It makes a more enjoyable listening experience. I'm more picky than most because it's my job to be picky. I've trained my ears to be picky. I was already picky. Let's get that out of the way. I was already picky, but I became pickier um, as someone in the field. You notice things a certain way, right? And I've been training myself to do that. So for me, in particular, if there's for instance, if there's constant like lip noises in the recording, it's hard for me to pay attention. Or if one guest's voice is louder than the hosts or vice versa, it just makes it a little bit more distracting and it's hard to take in the information because I'm too busy listening to the inconsistencies that are happening with the audio. Again, I'm more picky than most, so most listeners might not have that problem. I mean, there's so many podcasts out right now that do not get produced to the same level as this one just because they don't have an engineer, they don't have the budget for it, they don't know who to work with. So, in all fairness, right, it happens. It's always a possibility that it's totally okay anyway, but me personally, I think it's important because it makes a more enjoyable listening experience when you don't pay attention or don't have to pay attention to the inconsistencies of the audio.
Yeah, I like that. And that too turns a little bit into like a happiness thing, right? So if it sounds
Mhm.
good, it also is like contributes to the corporate happiness show that is all about happiness. So what does happiness mean for you personally?
So, happiness, I think for me, is tied a lot to fulfillment. I need to do things that I not only enjoy, but give me a certain satisfaction in doing. Not like, haha, I did this, you can't do this, right? Not that kind of, not that kind of fulfillment, but just like a deep, like soulful fulfillment of I enjoy what I do. I feel gratified that I was able to spend time on doing it. And I also feel like, I did this really well. I'm proud of myself for doing it this way. So that's one aspect of happiness. I also get a lot of happiness from my family, from my close social circle. I mean, I kind of keep it small. I'm not really like a big social person, but I like having my small social circle and putting time into it and spending time with those people that I love so much. So I think
Well,
love is
thank
happiness.
you for the compliment and right back at you. That's what happiness means for me too. So
My mom is my favorite person, just
I
saying.
know my daughter is my favorite person too. I don't know if the people can guess who that is, but anyway, so moving on.
No, I'm sure they have no idea, right?
Yeah, this is amazing. So, what about corporate happiness? Like happiness at work? What is, like what is it for you? Why do you think it's important and why do you think we need to talk about it?
I mean, I've worked a freelance as a freelancer with corporate companies. I've worked as part of corporate companies. I was as an assistant director in a music school, and it was a corporate position. I think it goes back to fulfillment. I think fulfillment is also something in the workplace, being able to do the job, being able to do it well without worrying, hey, is my boss going to get me in trouble because I did this a different way than I'm supposed to, but I did it well and the end result is the same. So I also think maybe a little bit of freedom and a little bit of a broader mindset, maybe, because when your boss has the ability to give you a little bit of freedom because they see the bigger picture and they're like, oh, the end result is the same, it's going to be maybe even better, and they give you the room to do that. I think that's part of corporate happiness, is trust between the boss and the employees, that the employees are doing things right and they are trying to make things work and move forward. It's not just the boss.
I like that. What about values? Values is such a big thing right now. Everyone speaks about values. Why do you think values are so important?
I think it's because most people want to make sure they align. Because if they align with the company before they've even joined the company, it gives them a better chance at succeeding in that company, and that company succeeding with them. For instance, if I were to apply somewhere and I learn, hey, actually, they hate blue hair, I'm okay. Bye. See you
Yeah.
next time. Good luck. I wish you will. But obviously, that's not the right fit for me. And I, I think it's just as simple as that. If I can already see with the company values, hey, this is something I agree with, then I have a better chance at succeeding within that company versus and that company succeeding with me as an employee. I'm not going to be, this rebellious teenage employee is like, I'm not doing this because I don't like it, and they're like, but you knew this coming in, right? So I think it works both ways. It's an alignment of people finding their right workplace and the right workplace finding them.
Yeah, and being able to be who you really are and not being judged because you're unique and you're actually true to yourself, which the corporate
Absolutely.
happiness, yeah, show stands for that, and also my work all stands for that. So
Well, and again, I feel like it's less about like judgment. Like they're not judging. I mean, maybe I shouldn't say that, but I don't judge companies for having different values than me. Their values are their values. They were set in them a long time ago. If I'm not trying to change it, then it's not my business, right? But my values are my business, and those are important, and those are important to the company as well. So I think it's helpful. The values thing is helpful because it helps us align with what we're looking for and have a company that aligns with us. So,
yeah, absolutely.
plus, if a value is growth of a company, then they're more likely to accept someone who's outside of the box thinking than a company who's like, yeah, we value our old fashioned our we've been upholding the same standard since, I don't know, 1921 or something like that, then it's like good for you, but that's probably not something that someone with an open mind and with like thinking outside of the box ideas, that might not necessarily be the best fit. So I think it's helpful, but
Absolutely. So, what would you tell other fellow young people out there that are going into the workforce, that are a little bit tad younger than you? They're just coming out of school. You've been there, done that for a while now. So, what would you tell these young people? Some, to that they can hold themselves onto, to absolutely take the bravery and being who they are and going out there and looking for a job.
I mean, there's three things that I've been told. One is a quote, but three things that I've been told that I think are super important when you're entering the workforce for the first time. One is, I'm pretty sure you said this to me actually, when you're going to an interview, hey, it was smart, I'm gonna say it. But when you go into an interview with someone and you're applying for a job, it's not just them interviewing you, you are also interviewing them, right? So sure, if you're interested in a job and you're starting to get desperate for one, I've been there, believe me. um Not everyone likes blue hair, uh but ultimately it's important, because if you don't like them in that interview, and it's going to be something that's going to be hard to change later, right? Circling back to the whole values thing, if something like integrity wise, or for your morals or whatnot, if it's something that you can't live with later, don't do it, right? Interview them just as they're interviewing you. And then the other one is, this is kind of a cliche, but I think it's important, especially when there is fear in the situation, is like, bravery is not without fear, right? Bravery is acting in spite of that fear, despite the fear, right? You're not acting because of the fear. You're doing things in spite of it. So acknowledge your fear, embrace it, and then let it go, because it ain't helping you. And just kind of just know it's normal, right? First time I applied for a job, I was terrified, and then I got the call for the interview, and I was like, oh, now what? So it's step by step. And then the last thing, and this is pretty much geared towards music producers, but I think it also works for ideas, is like, your ideas, your music, your creations are not doing you any favors on your hard drive. Don't leave them in your hard drive. I was told this by a guest speaker during my college years, and it's something that's stuck with me for a long time. Don't leave your stuff in your hard drive. It's not helping you there. Get it out there. Even if only like 5 people see it, you might have changed one of those 5 people's lives, and who knows who they know, right? It's not about the immediate connection, it's also about the connection that connection has. So it goes all the way around. So that's, I guess, a bit more towards networking, but
I love that.
those are the three things that I would say.
Very, very good. I love that. Love that. So, what do you do, and or what is your main goal with your music? What are you, I mean, what are you trying to accomplish for yourself, and what are you trying to get out there, and how are you trying to make people feel or touch them with your music?
Well, it's it's a multifaceted answer, because I do so many musical things and I can't bring myself to let go of any of them. I like having all these different hats that I can wear. I really enjoy that. As far as audio engineering goes, I like doing the small commitments that I'm doing right now, where I freelance. I have the odd podcasting gig. I have the odd soundboarding moment that I design, which is super fun. I love that. You have basically 10 seconds to create something memorable. I think it's such a cool challenge. For my personal music, I intend to keep releasing. I'm already a released artist. My stuff is on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube. I plan on continuing with that. I would also love to go on tour at some point. I'm ramping up gigs and performances, so that hopefully at some point I can join the plan for touring, because I think touring would be really cool. But yeah.
That's
And as far
amazing.
as like creating feelings for people, not all my songs are like this. I do write the occasional song that's written about a movement that's happening. I wrote a song for BLM when BLM was really, really like out there and all that crazy stuff was happening. I wrote a song for that and I released it because I thought it was important to say something and to stand up for it and go, hey, this is what I believe. I feel like part of being an artist is also sharing your opinion. You don't have to judge anyone else. It's not about judging, but it's about sharing, hey, this is what I believe. Because it can be a voice for someone who doesn't have a voice.
That's true. That's true. So what would you say to podcasters? Like let's say this season 2 is gonna come. We have great big plans with season 2. We're wrapping up season 1 with this episode, and it's been amazing so far. And season 2, we're coming out with a little bit of a different way of doing it. So that brings up the thing, like, so what am I supposed to tell my new guests so they sound good? And they also, like, maybe podcasters would like to know that too, like in case they don't have such a magical person like I do in you doing my sound and telling me how. So what makes people sound good? And we know, well, we have stories between you and I how I don't sound so good because of my voice, because I'm not able to train it.
No, that's never happened.
Willing.
You've always been fabulous. You've always been fabulous.
But, well, you make me sound fabulous at the end. But so what can you,
it's
like,
the quality content that stands out for itself. Well, actually, that is something. If you have quality content, it matters a little less. It still matters. So, like, I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but it matters a little less if your quality is not as great. Because ultimately, it also depends on your budget, right? Microphones are expensive. It can be expensive, right? The one that I'm using right now is not intended for podcasting, and I got it on sale at $500. So, just saying, mics can be expensive, and that's okay if you can't go for the high stuff right away. You know, this is a climbing game. You start with something. My first microphone cost $50 in an Amazon package, and it's terrible. I don't use it anymore. I'm actually thinking of giving it to a friend of mine. So keep in mind that with your budget, you don't have to spend it right now. But also keep in mind that if you get a better quality mic right now, starting out, it's going to last you longer than a short-term mediocre quality mic will. So, I mean, there's also the added benefit of knowing what a couple different, like, audio terms mean. So when a mic is, like, when you read these reviews and you hear someone say, oh, this mic has a brighter sound, it means that it lifts up the high end, so the higher, like, pitches and nuances of the voice. If you have a deeper voice, that might actually work really well for you, because then it's not going to boom your bass tones, right? Otherwise, it goes the other way. If someone says this mic in a review, oh, it's super bassy and it's boomy, it makes my voice boomy, well, they're using the wrong mic. What they need to do is be using something that boosts the higher end, not the lower end. So keep in mind when you're reading these reviews that those terms are very specific and actually can help balance out your voice. So for instance, mine, I have a higher register, but when I talk, it's a little lower. This one is a flat mic. It does nothing. It boosts nothing, which is why it works so well. The microphone that FreakyHealer is using boosts a little bit less of the highs, boosts a little bit more of the mids, because she has a bit of a higher voice. And it's not a bad thing, right? Everybody's voice is cool. There's a microphone for that. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at gear, because gear is super important about the sound, right? Gear is so important. Look at the reviews and see those words that they're using, because they will help you figure out if this is good for your voice or not. Also, feel free to just dive into reviews on YouTube, right? You'll hear the differences. Eventually, you will start learning to hear those differences. It takes a bit of time, but you can train yourself to hear those. And ultimately, that's going to help a lot.
With questions, we get at the end of the show.
You can also, instead of internalizing all this, you can just make me do the heavy lifting too. I'm happy to do that.
Exactly. So also, I wanted to bring up a little bit, like, how the Corporate Happiness Show got started. So when I first came to you and said, would you be willing to do this? What intrigued you about this?
I like the idea of breaking into the corporate world and talking about happiness, because those are two things that usually do not go hand in hand. Everyone's like, oh, my job, it's a job. I do it, I go home, and then I'm happy. I'm happy to leave, right? And I think that I think it's a nice change of pace. What the show does and what the show talks about, and that's what intrigued me is it's there's a word for that. It's like pretty odd, or like it's one of those words. I forgot the term for it. This is gonna bug me later, but it's one of those terms where it's like it doesn't normally come into play together, and I think that it's really cool that that your show is kind of like soothing and erasing that stereotype of it's just a job. You're not supposed to be happy in your job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the shift is absolutely starting, and that's kind of like why there even was a talk about making that show. And it was actually me talking to a friend about work and energy and happiness and well-being and consciousness, because that's where I'm coming from, right? All that holistic
Right, right.
practitioner energetic work and everything I do for people, and my books are all about that. And and I was talking with a friend, and then he basically said, you have to create a show, and it has to be something like a corporate, whatever kind of. And we came up with corporate happiness show, and it sounded so amazing and so aligned. I knew it's real, and it is, because the new way of work and the new way of working, because we work so many hours, it should be enjoyable, and at least if you don't enjoy the work, well, what else could you enjoy at work? The people. Sometimes it's just, reflecting on the income or the coffee there is, or something, or that you get to work from home or whatever. And because when you're actually feeling good, and happiness to me, it's not just, giggling on the trampoline all day long, it's like part of it. Sure, I love to have fun in my life, but the thing is happiness is a sort of a well feeling, it's satisfaction. It's like I feel aligned. I am who I am, and I smile, I laugh. But then also, like, sadness can be really happy too, because yes, sad can be happy, just like corporate can be happiness too in the corporate world. It's because when you're looking at sadness and you're realizing the cleansing that there is, then that in itself is well-being, and that goes under the hood of being happy. So it's like a whole thing. And that's like what intrigued me about the show and everything. And then of course we started with amazing guests, and we had listeners and lots of downloads, and it just kind of grew and everything. So, and I'm of course really really happy, because every time I say to somebody, hey, would you like to be on the show, or they contact me, same with asking you if you would like to be part of it, people usually say, oh yes, please, I want to be part of something great like that, because it's for the bigger picture. And that's what I really really love about this work. And I'm really glad that you're making it sound good, to make people even happier when they listen to that, right? And I mean, your
It's my pleasure. I
intro.
enjoy the work.
Yeah, and
I
your
actually
intro
wanted to ask a
music is
question.
so good. So
I actually wanted to ask a question about your guests. Like, is there a particular reason you chose the guests you did? Like, was there a particular reason why? Was
uh,
there anything that
well,
stood out about them that you kind of looked at them like, you know, this is the person I want as a guest?
my first guest was Grace Woods, and she's actually in Europe. And she popped into my LinkedIn, I don't know, like opened up LinkedIn, and there she was. And I thought, okay, she would be an amazing first guest. And the reason why is when my first book in 2018 came out, 365 Days of Happiness, she actually reached out to me and said, hey, I have your book and I love it and I want to learn more from you. And she's been following my work, and we kind of talked here and there a little bit, even tried with sessions and whatnot. And but never, I was booked, she was booked, and it was just like, but since years she's been following me and reaching out to me and saying, I took your advice and look what happened, look, I listened to that and look what happened. Because I have another podcast that actually reached its completion. It was the Daily Freak, then it turned into the Weekly Freak. And so I reached out to her and I said, hey, you want to be on my show? Because she is actually a recruiter in a great company, very forward thinking in Europe. And I said, would you like to be on the podcast? Because I think you have so much to say. And she said yes. And she was my first guest. And she's really amazing. And then there was from the same company, there was like another person that then wanted to come on the podcast because she has so much to say too, and she actually mastered in psychology, and it was just a great fit. But ultimately I want to say that all the other guests, they just kind of, it just aligned. Either they came to me or I met them, I said, hey, would you like to be on my show? That would be amazing. And the funny part, and it was not intended, the funny part is that it was mostly women. Now, I pride myself in that.
Girl power.
Yes. However, it doesn't really matter to me, and it doesn't matter the background. It doesn't matter who they are. They were just unique people that had something really amazing to say, and it aligned. And then we said, okay, we're going to close off season 1 with 30 episodes, and the new season 2 will be a little bit different. But all guests were incredible, all come from different backgrounds. And so yes, I think there were like 2 men in there or whatnot, something like that. And they're great too, because very open-minded, very, very embracing anybody, and just like everybody and anybody as it is. So, and that's kind of like what goes into Corporate Happiness Show, because the value of this show is out of the box thinking in how can we create a better workplace for people. And but there are also a bunch of like HR specialists, HR experts in there, and just really powerhouses. When you hear them speak, it's like all you can do is just listen. They were in there, and then we had a couple coaches, and we even had a self-defense firm in there that can create really safety for your people at work, because that can create really happiness. So, and politics, there were politicians in, and there was even a weatherman, he's a sports fanatic and a weatherman. So we brought in the weather, how that actually then can create your mood and whatnot, and what you can do about. So like I said, it's like really broad, but each one of my guests was just really uniquely them. With that, they had lots to say, and they're changing the world as we speak. So does that make sense?
Oh, for sure. I was actually going to ask, so given that there's a season 2 on the way, is there a particular guest that you would absolutely adore to have on this show?
I was thinking about that, because season 2 will be a little bit different. And one of my big wishes would be to talk to young people. I want to hear from young people. I want to hear from high schoolers, even middle schoolers, or younger. And I want to hear from college students. What do they think? Because I tell you what, we can talk about how it's been and what we can do, but the future, who is the future? It's young people. So I want to talk to young people. That would be my wish. And to hear from them what they think is needed, what they think the change is, what is their future? How do they want it to be? Because they're the ones that are actually the future. And so that would actually be something, and I'm contemplating on that for season 2, to maybe make a focus of that. So if you are a young person, or if you know of an amazing young person that has something to say, I would love for them or you to contact me, and then we can talk and we can do a recording or see how we can make that happen. Because I tell you what, in my work, the children's book that just Alice in a Genie that just published, it's an emotional intelligence book. I spoke to so many kids lately, and they have so much to say, and they're young.
Oh yeah,
really
kids
young
are so smart.
Oh, so young, and they have so much to say. And I know maybe some will look at it, Corporate Happiness Show, and she has children or really young people as guests. But I tell you what, they're the future. it's time that we start listening. So thank you for that question, Zoe, because that's great that I was able to say that.
Well, I'm curious.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. So we
I'm looking
actually,
forward to editing. I'm looking forward to editing the next season. I think it's going to be really
oh,
really
it's
something
gonna be
special.
fun. And if it's
Mm.
young people and children, we're gonna maybe change the theme song too,
Oh,
right?
it's going to be very very fun.
Yes, let's
I
do it.
foresee a bunch of giggle fits.
Oh, I love that. I'd love that. Yeah, we need more laughter. So, anyway,
Nah, who
so
needs laughter? You know, it's not like it's
right?
fun or stress
Right.
relieving or anything like that,
Yeah,
right?
it's not making anything better. So let's not even get into
Nah,
that. So, but
nah, it's superficial.
I know, right? So we actually have come to the end of the episode because, to keep it a little short and dense. So where can people find you, Zoe? Besides where you live. We don't want to give that out. But I mean,
No, I'm gonna keep that bit to
Yes.
myself. Actually, I prefer to keep that with a little bit of mystery.
Yeah.
Shocker. So, well, as for me business-wise, you can find me on LinkedIn at Zoe Pirtle. It's Zoe Zoe, no umlaut, no Y. Or you can find me on Instagram. I'm usually pretty fast about responding on Instagram at musician.for.life. No weird spellings, it's just for the number .life, just regularly spelled. And if you're interested in my music is actually available on pretty much any streaming platform you can think of, but primarily Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube under the name Zoe Mina. So, fun stuff.
I know. Excellent.
Yeah. And I love talking to people about audio. Like, if you are looking for a consultation on gear setup or a microphone or anything, I'm always happy to chat with you. So please reach out. I love talking
that.
to people.
I love that. I invite everyone listening to connect with Zoe out of many, many reasons, because she will have an answer for all her professional thing that she does. And also, like I said, she's the published editor for all of my books, meaning that, there's some good stuff in there too.
So if you need a proofreader, who can also by some weird coincidence record you vocally.
It's amazing. Amazing. And thank you for everything you do for this show, because you are a huge part of the success. And I appreciate you professionally. The Corporate Happiness Show thanks you with all of the big heart of the Corporate Happiness Show. And of course, you mean the world to me. So thanks for being on the show, Zoe.
Well, thank you for having me here, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to work on this show, because this was honestly very, very enjoyable, and I had a great time. So
awesome. And off to season 2. Thank you,
listeners.
Off to season
2, yes.
Yes, thank you, listeners, for listening, and we'll see you soon. Have a great summer.